Integrity, I think for me was very important that it be a part of our branding and that it be a part of our slogan because, a lot of companies will put it in their values. That's kind of hidden on their website. But for me, I wanted that to be the thing that patients and team members alike saw from the get-go and understood from the get-go.
Welcome to the Business of Healthcare podcast from the Center for Healthcare Leadership and Management at the Naveen Jindal School of Management. Here at the University of Texas at Dallas, we bring together business leaders and other forward thinkers to discuss how best to meet the challenges of a rapidly changing, increasingly complex healthcare ecosystem. I'm Dr. Bob Kaiser, Director of the Master's Program in Healthcare Leadership and Management. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app to ensure you don't miss any of the future episodes. You can also join us online at businessofhealthcarepodcast.com. Today, we have a special guest on many counts. First, she has 3 degrees from the University of Texas, Dallas, 2 bachelor's and a master's degree in healthcare leadership and management from the Jindal School. Also, a dental degree from Texas A&M, and most recently recognized by the Dallas Business Journal 40 Under 40 for being the founder and owner of Brush 365 Dental Practices. We're pleased to welcome Dr. Sara Mahmood to the Business of Healthcare podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Sara.
Thanks for having me, Bob. I'm excited to be here.
Episode 97, we actually had a dentist on talking about how things have been changed in the dental industry. And Sara, you're a dentist too, but just not an ordinary one. So tell us about your journey. Start off with your journey and tell us where you started on this whole idea of making a change in the dental industry.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a healthcare family. My dad is a physician, so I've been exposed to healthcare concepts ever since I was younger. And I think unlike ordinary families, my dad has always been really involved in making sure we were involved in his profession. So I still remember car rides to school while I was in elementary school where he would ask us the 5 risk factors of heart disease or the 5 risk factors of diabetes. We would go shadow him and go on rounds with him to the hospital. I was very much infatuated with what he did and how he helped heal people. It was just a big part of my life growing up. And I always thought that I would follow in his footsteps and become a nephrologist. So I knew healthcare was in my future somehow. And later on in high school, as I began to kind of decide where I wanted to take my efforts and focus, my dad was later in his career, and he really encouraged thinking outside the box and maybe not going into medicine for more traditional reasons. He had calls at night, in the middle of the night. He was needed on the weekends, and he thought, let me instill in my kids a desire to do something more weekdays, 9 to 5, that would also give them the respect of being a doctor and being in healthcare. So he encouraged me to consider dentistry, and I shadowed, and I started to really see that there was a blend between art and science that I really loved. So I went into college knowing that I wanted to be a dentist. And, little things from my childhood came back to me. My parents going to dentists when growing up, any new place we would go to, trying to find a provider. And one thing that really stood out to me is a story that I talk about all the time. It's on my website, and I think about it all every day. Is when my mom went to the dentist and she came home and she had a tooth pulled and she couldn't understand why. The why behind it wasn't explained to her in a way that she readily understood, and she was pretty upset about it. And so I knew then that something about the way that dentistry was in that moment needed to be addressed and changed and made better. Patients should never leave their healthcare facility feeling like they're unclear about what is being recommended and what is being completed. In college, I saw my dad shift more to the entrepreneurial side of healthcare. He had dialysis clinics. He opened up a hospital. He was no longer practicing medicine per se. He was running the show. He was doing the business side of it. And I could see how invigorated it made him and how fulfilled he was. And I knew then, I wanted to do that too. And so he's been kind of the mirror of what I've wanted to do in my life. And so in college, again, I went in with blinkers on, and I had an idea that when I became a dentist, not if, but when, because there was never a plan B option in my family. It was you when you set your mind to something, you do it. And so when I became a dentist, that I would grow a brand and try to address the problems that I saw in it, which was doing the right thing and transparency and honesty.
So it sounds to me like you could not escape the fact that you're going to be in some type of healthcare just because of the strong influence of your environment. I mean, I love hearing the stories. We have a graduate program at UT Dallas. It's exclusively for physicians. It's the Alliance for Physician Leadership. And one of the first questions I ask all the doctors, tell me, when did you decide that you wanted to become a doctor? And those stories are varied, some by accident, some on purpose, some coincidental, but they're all very interesting stories. So early on, you knew that dentistry was going to be a path for you. Did that seem like a barrier? Are there a lot of women that are in dentistry, or is that a minority in dentistry?
I think the trend is definitely shifting to it being more women in dentistry, which is awesome. But what we're still lacking is women in entrepreneurship in dentistry. So while the women dentists are on the rise, women owners of dental practices is not. So that's definitely something that I hope shifts with time. But it seems that, with the corporate dentistry also on the rise, it works for that model to have less female owners and more of those big giants that just get employee dentists that are not interested in entrepreneurship.
So I went down to the local College of Dentistry here in town and held a lunchtime session for the D2 students. D2, I think that's the second year students, if I recall that right.
Yes.
What we talked about were things that were totally non-related to clinical practice. We talked about emotional intelligence and a lot of other topics that typically aren't covered. And so when you graduate from dental school, I asked this of these dental students, what are you going to do? And most of them said, I'm just going to go work for a dental practice somewhere, Mm-hmm. Very few of them said, I want to start off on my own and create a practice. I don't know anything about business or how to accomplish those type of things. So I just need some guidance and help. What was your approach, Sarah, when you got out of dental school?
I mean, I think with the rising cost of education and the desire for this, these next few generations to want to have that so-called work-life balance, have paid time off, have healthcare benefits, those kinds of things are just not intrinsic to entrepreneurship. The values have shifted. And even in my own class, I graduated in 2015. I only have a handful of classmates that actually went on to go and open their own practice. It's just not how it used to be. When our parents' generation went to medical school or dental school or optometry school, it was just a natural progression to come out and, start your own shop and go from there. But now with the corporate model, you get all of these benefits that you just can't get as an entrepreneur, healthcare and 401k match and, time to go vacation while you're still getting paid. That's not heard of when you're first starting off in private practice. And so I definitely understand the appeal. I honestly monopolize off of it because I can offer those same things to dentists when they graduate and want to work for my company. It's just a shift. The blue ocean is there. We're no longer competing to start practices, I think, as much as we were before.
So once you graduated dental school, what was the next phase of your continuing education?
So I actually am a huge proponent. I think 4 years in dentistry and the dental school is not enough to understand all of the nuances and facets of being a high caliber dentist. So I've actually done like 1,100 hours of continuing education coursework in that time since I graduated in 2015. I did practice in private practice model, corporate model for about a year and a half before I started my own office. I just wanted to get a feel for what the other ways of doing ththings were. And to this day, I still kind of wonder if I should have done that longer, if I should have been exposed to systems and processes rather than be, in this silos of kind of reinventing the wheel in a lot of aspects. But I do appreciate the time that I did have out there in the school of the hard knocks. Residency is not required after dental school like it is in medicine. And so I did, in a lot of the courses, like implants and cosmetic dentistry, you have to go out of your way to want to learn those things. You don't just get that from the four walls of dental school.
Well, they say a new broom sweeps clean, but the old one knows the corners. So you're kind of the new broom. You have this theme I read about. It's called integrity, a core value of what you do. And I think your tagline is dentistry with integrity. Tell me about integrity and your company and how that fits in.
Yeah. Integrity, I think for me was very important that it be a part of our branding and that it be a part of our slogan, because, a lot of companies will put it in their values. That's kind of hidden on their website. But for me, I wanted that to be the thing that patients and team members alike saw from the get-go and understood from the get-go. And I haven't always gotten it right, but it's definitely been something I'm very proud of. We hire based on that. And I know that our patients choose us because of that. I can't tell you how often people will come from far and wide, East Texas, West Texas, out of state, just to say, we wanted to come to you because we know that you're going to give us honest feedback on our current condition. We read your reviews and we just want someone that we can trust. And that means a lot to me. That really does. And I hope that we can keep that our tagline and promise forever, because that's my why, is getting into this realm and this business is to be able to shed that light on everyone in every community that we serve. And I still remember, back early on when I first opened, we had submitted an incorrect insurance claim and gotten paid on it. And when you're first starting out, you get this check from insurance and some crazy amount. You're like, oh, okay, we'll do the work later, or, we'll correct this wrong some other way. And I called my dad and I said, what should I do? I just got paid on something that I didn't actually complete. And he said, you have to give that money back. You have to do the right thing. And then he said, in your gut, you always know whether something is right or wrong, and don't ignore that feeling. And so I gave the money back. It's not worth it to me to make an extra few dollars here and there by doing the wrong thing. It's just not. And like I said, I hire on that. So any team member that comes into my office that we interview and that we end up giving the position, they have to have that level of integrity radiate from them. Radiate. I mean, you have to feel it, that this person wants the best for me and wants the best for everybody that we serve. And like I said, it's not always conducive to profitability, but we've been doing okay. Just because you don't have like a 50% EBITDA, 15 is fine too. You don't have to be greedy when it comes to other people's health.
I like that. I like that. I've been an entrepreneur as well. And in one of my startups, we had about 50 employees. It was a small firm, but I put a very small sign on every place you could come in and go out of our office. It was made with one of those little label makers. That's how small the sign was. But it said, part of your next paycheck, just walk through the door. Part of your next paycheck, just walk through the door. And what that meant was twofold. It meant the customer that might be coming in the door, but also meant the employee, the partner, the person working with you, they are part of your next paycheck as well. And to have that level of trust and communication and follow through, where the people that work for you believe in what you're talking about, like you just said, a high exponential level of integrity. You didn't have to second guess that about them. What prompted you to take that on as such a strong, what I'd say, a strong core value?
The situation with my mom planted the seed, but as you go out and do kind of grassroots market research and you talk to people about their experience, I did this all throughout college and dental school. I was just getting data, tell me about your dental experience and how did it go? Resoundingly, there was a doubt or hesitancy on trusting recommendations from dentists. And maybe you've seen it in your life with your friends and family that, there's just a lack of trust. And so I thought this is already hitting close to home for me because it's something that I care strongly about with my own family. But what if I could create something that tackled this problem head on? And when you go and drive through the streets of DFW, you see a dentist on every corner. So you have to figure out a way to set yourself apart. I have the tech, I do same day crowns, I have the lasers, I have all the highly trained team members. Everyone does, right? There's so many people that have, technology niches or are able to do a certain level of dentistry. That part we've taken care of. But what sets us apart is that you will be able to get transparency, honesty, and trust when you come through our doors. And if not, you have my personal cell phone number is on every piece of marketing, every business card. Call me, email me if you feel like you got shorted or something was below your expectation. And I will say, I haven't gotten it right always, and people will reach out to me, but I love when they do. My favorite thing is to get feedback that's not a 5-star review, because that's how we get better. That's how we pick up and learn from our mistakes and grow as a company. And I tell the team that too. We want 5-star reviews, but when we don't get it, be grateful. Be grateful that someone had the courage and honesty to share with us what we could have done better.
This episode is brought to you by the Center for Healthcare Leadership and Management, the definitive resource for healthcare management education in North Texas. The center is based in the Naveen Jindal School of Management at the University of Texas at Dallas. It plays a unique role in training the next generation of healthcare leaders to meet local, regional, and national demands. The Jindal School uses its strengths in accounting, administration, finance, marketing, and information systems to educate highly qualified personnel for healthcare administration and executive leadership positions. The center is home to 7 healthcare leadership and management programs, including undergraduate and graduate programs, as well as executive programs for physicians and working professionals. For more information, visit us online at jindal.utdallas.edu/healthcare.
Well, I know that in today's world with social media, that if you do something wrong and you don't respond respectfully, the floodgates will open on you with all the negative press in the world. Take any airline that's lost luggage and didn't respond to the customer about the lost luggage, and people write songs about the airline, and the word gets out. Don't fly with these guys. The same thing in healthcare. I mean, today we'd like to think that we're here on purpose to serve the patient. That's number one. The patient should be in every aspect of what we do. And we have people on the podcast that have written books like Dr. Marty McCary, The Price We Pay, talks about all the problems and all the difficulties and all the things in healthcare that can go wrong. And things are changing now. For example, with COVID, people are getting jobs where they don't have to show up and go to the office. They're working different hours and things of that nature. How do you adjust for that in the dental world? Do you make changes and tune in to these new social norms that are out there?
Yeah, no, definitely. When it comes to immediate feedback in the social world that we live in, it's a gift in that when you get, feedback that's not the best from a normal, sane person, then it's actionable. But there's people out there that just aren't going to like what you do. And it's unfortunate that providers have to almost live in fear that someone who's not quite all there, it may bash your company or your business. So that part is definitely a negative side of the social world we live in. But I think resoundingly, it's positive that, you have to be held to a certain standard and you have to perform in a way that will allow patients to feel good about what you do. So there are many benefits. I remember when my dad was a physician when I was in the 90s, back then there was no Yelp or Google or Instagram, you really didn't have any accountability. So the accountability factor is great. When it comes to the varied world we live in with, people not working 9 to 5 anymore, working from home, I kind of understood this back in 2017 when I first opened. And I told my team then, and as we've continued to grow in locations, we've kept this up in that we have non-traditional hours. So it's kind of funny because my dad wanted me to go into dentistry to work on Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but it just hasn't been the case because people that work 9 to 5, they can't take off of work for a cleaning or dental work. They need to be able to have convenient hours that work for them. So all of my offices are open as early as 7 a.m., open until 7 p.m., open on Saturdays. And we're in network providers, and I'm proud of it. I see a lot of my colleagues really, boast about how they're out of network and like I said, their margins are so great because they can charge whatever they want. I take a lot of pride that Brush 365 is a network because people work hard for their insurance. People are proud of their insurance. And why shouldn't they be able to maximize that in a high quality facility? So we have kind of addressed, and I think as we get into this recession with inflation, it's even more important as people are holding on to every dollar and holding on to their jobs to be able to accept every insurance plan and offer them hours that work for them.
I know consumer directed is becoming a big theme, especially with the newer generation. I'm the older generation, of course, and I'm used to going to see the doctor or the dentist and working on their terms. But today, expectations are, can't you examine my teeth over the iPhone? Come on, there ought to be something you can do to help me out here. But I think tuning in and listening to what people want. They used to say that the patient's number one. That's number one. Others have said, maybe not so. Maybe it's our employees are more important. What's your pitch on that?
What a shift, right? What a crazy shift in mindset. And I'm so grateful because I started my master's in healthcare management at UTD. And I always say this, but it was the day that I graduated from dental school. That day, I started my classes. And on a whim, my second semester, I signed up for a class called Principles of Hospital Administration because, as I mentioned, my dad he owned and ran a hospital at that time. And I thought, let me try to get a glimpse of what his day-to-day is. And I took the class with Dr. Britt Barrett. And from the very first class, he talked about how patients come second and that he had co-authored a book on it and that he would give us a copy of that book for free and he'd sign it for us and he wanted us to read it. And when you first hear it, it kind of sounds just like uncomfortable. How can you say that as a healthcare provider that patients come second? Or we took a Hippocratic oath, like patients should come first. But when he dived into it over the course of the semester, it all just made so much sense. He spent so much time talking about the values of employee engagement and monitoring how committed your employees are and how happy they are, because the happier they are, the more likely they'll take better care of your patients. And as someone who runs 4 clinics and has so many employees, I can't guarantee that every patient is going to be treated well, but I can guarantee that my team will, and then have faith that the team will take care of the patients, right? If the team is happy and satisfied and engaged and committed to our purpose and goal, then the patients inadvertently benefit always.
So outside of being a doctor dentist, Sara, what do you do to inspire other people that are in this growth area? I mean, you're just recently recognized as being one of the more innovative top leaders under the age of 40. I think that's so cool.
Thank you.
That people recognize that there are entrepreneurs out there making a big difference. But what's your influence point? What do you try to get across to other folks?
I resoundingly encourage people to take the risk, to get out of your comfort zone. Your mind is naturally going to gravitate towards talking you out of doing something that feels scary or foreign. Ignore that thought. I have so many colleagues that have been on the fence about entrepreneurship and opening up their own practice for years almost. But every time I see them, I just say, if not now, when? Nothing, your life is not going to be aligned perfectly in a way that you'll just feel ready. You're never going to feel ready. I have, some colleagues that'll say, we want to buy a house first and have a kid, and then I'll think about it. All of those happen. And there's always going to be a reason that you're going to feel busy or unable to do it. Ignore that feeling and do it anyway, because that's where the growth happens. And that's where your life can become so enriched and so fulfilled and so challenged. It's like when as you get older, I'm 32 now, and you fall into a routine, you get into the status quo of things, like this is just my life, but you can't expect it to change or grow or be bigger unless you step out of your comfort zone and take that chance. I'm all for entrepreneurship, and I have had many hard days, sleepless nights, stress, anxiety, but I've coupled that with so much reward and joy and satisfaction to be able to build something and grow something. It's not for everyone, but if you're on the fence about it, you're thinking about it, just do it.
I think there's a book in your future. I'd like to think that that's the case. When I was a young graduate out of engineering school, we didn't really have anything that was inspirational or motivational, but there were a few things out there that I got introduced to. And one of them was a book by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich. And he wrote that in 1937 when the Depression was going on. And there was no hope for anybody. Everything was in bad shape. But he really incorporated this philosophy of achievement. And, he has like a dozen different principles associated with this philosophy of achievement. And a couple of them here I think are important because I think you can relate to them. And the first one he talks about is desire, wanting to do something. Tell us about growing your practice. You just don't have one office. Tell us about the desire to make this grow in your field.
I'm so happy that you brought that book up. And nowadays, manifesting is having a moment. You kind of see it all over social platforms that you need to manifest the life you want. And my favorite book is actually a book written around the same time as Think and Grow Rich, but it's called The Magic of Thinking Big. And the first step, and like you said, is to have a desire. You have to believe and focus your energy into thinking about what you're capable of doing, what you want, not even what you're capable of doing, but what you want and what you envision your life to be. There's no limit. The limit doesn't exist. When you put a limit, then that is going to be your ceiling. There's just no way around it. But you have to think bigger. You have to want more. And so when I first started, oh my gosh, like the day-to-day wore me down. And then I had to really step outside of myself and think, I'm not doing this to just have one practice. I'm doing this to build a company. And so once you focus your mindset on, okay, I need to spend a certain amount of time, yes, keeping the operations of the daily workflow going, but I also need to dedicate a certain amount of time to dreaming, to looking up practices for sale, to looking up sites for my next location. And the only way you can really do that is by establishing systems and processes. So you kind of work backwards, right? You think about where you want to be, and then you set in place the workflow that you need to get there. But you can't lose sight of what you want. And I want 100 practices, 200 practices, and my why. I think everyone thinks that their why is noble, but I believe that my why is noble. I want to bring integrity and high quality care to the communities that I serve. And so it's so easy to get caught up, like I said, in the daily grind, but you have to dedicate your mindset and thought process to wanting more.
You absolutely do. They move from desire to faith, specialized knowledge, imagination, organized planning, persistence. Wow. Think about that. The persistence factor that you've gone through.
Yeah.
Were there times where you thought, I can't get to the finish line here or to the new start line?
You mean every day? That's every day. That's why I'm still like, my mind is blown that I won this award and that I'm on this podcast and that people are recognizing, where I am, because every day I'm like, am I doing this right?
Yes.
Am I on the right path? Did I make the right decision? And set, really critically evaluating kind of every part of this journey on how can I do this better? Did I handle that conversation with the employee the right way? How did they feel about the way that I said things? Every little thing gets kind of critically evaluated. And my guess is that's just the way that it is for entrepreneurs, is that you have to self-evaluate.
Outside of your family, do you have a what I'd call a mastermind group, a network of people that you collaborate with to be innovative?
So my family is full of entrepreneurs. My sister owns a daycare. My other sister owns a group of med spas. My dad is kind of a serial entrepreneur. My husband has 4 chiropractic clinics in DFW. So my mastermind, I'm so lucky, Bob. And it doesn't escape me even for a second at how blessed I am to have the circumstances that I was so fortunate to be born into. My mastermind is my family. And, I one of the things that my dad has always instilled in us is to have humility and to always be willing to learn. And so I'm always fascinated and curious whenever I get to meet colleagues that have been there, done that, and done amazing things. One of our family friends is the founder of Deca Dental, and they have hundreds of practices now across the US. And I've had the opportunity to sit down and meet with him. I was so fortunate to just hear him speak. And now he's on the center stage at every conference he goes to. But I'm just so proud of the people that have already been there and done that. And I hope that I can continue to have like this desire to learn and be curious. I think a lot of times when you get into entrepreneurship, you do it because you think you're doing the right thing and that you're right. And you pigeonhole yourself. And I'm actively trying to not do that.
Another great reference that came out in 1957, 20 years after Think and Grow Rich, was a guy named Earl Nightingale, and he basically recorded a record. Actually, it was one of the first records to sell over 1 million copies. It's called The Strangest Secret. And The Strangest Secret, you can listen to it. It's 30 minutes long, but I'll tell you what the strangest secret is here, because it's 6 words. And I conclude these are the 6 most powerful words in the English language. And I share them with everybody all the time. I just become obsessed with it sometimes. But these 6 words are as follows. You become what you think about. You become what you think about. And I think this interview with you has really demonstrated that to me. Your early ideas going into your chosen profession, and you have become what you thought about. And you will continue to do that as you continue to innovate and make more changes going forward. What are your thoughts on that? You become what you think about.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that where you channel your thoughts is what manifests and comes to fruition and comes to life. I think we live in a really distracted world. The paradox of choice is everywhere. People are confounded with options, and then they don't make a decision on where to concert their efforts. If I could give one piece of advice to the next generation is focus. Really focus, because if you get distracted along the way and you're not channeling your energy into your goals, how are you going to see them come true if you're constantly being pulled in a million different directions? You really have to focus, think about what you want first. First you have to establish what you want, and then you have to be obsessed with it.
I think I heard it said by Zig Ziglar that don't be a wandering generality, but be a meaningful specific.
Yes.
That's what you just said there as well.
Yes.
Well, Sarah, this has been a very good conversation. I'm delighted to have you on to share the entrepreneurial spirit. You know, people ask all the time, you know, are you successful? How do you measure success? And on interviews, people will say, are you successful? Most people stop and they go, yeah, I think so. But once again, going back to Earl Nightingale, he had a nice definition of success. I'm going to share it with the audience and with you. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. It's a progressive realization. So what you've done didn't happen overnight. And what you're going to continue to do isn't going to happen overnight. It's progressive. Things that you realize, that you think about, that you work on. And the worthy ideal, like you said earlier, your worthy ideal is very, very well defined, dentistry with integrity. Mm-hmm. So thank you for being part of the Business of Healthcare podcast today. We've enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, thank you so much. It's really been an honor, and I've enjoyed talking to you, Bob.
Thanks for listening to the Business of Healthcare podcast. To learn more about the Center for Healthcare Leadership and Management, go to jindal.utdallas.edu/healthcare.